Hey guys, it's Josh. I'm here with Brian Anderson, Field CTO. I'm excited for this video. We're going to talk about Terraform and Cato. So let's get started, Brian.
Absolutely. In other videos, you've seen how we've talked about what Terraform is and how to use it. Today, we're going to talk about how to use Terraform specific for Cato. And again, this is going to be provisioning configurations like sites, rules, anything that you want to provision in the management lifecycle of the Cato platform. You can now have those things be a possibility with Terraform directly. So let's jump into it. Let's navigate back over to the Terraform registry and refresh. The Terraform registry is like the marketplace for all things you would find for Terraform. Here under the search tab, I can look for Cato, and I'm going to look for providers, and we'll talk about modules in other future or other videos outside of this, but we're going to say, let's look for the Cato provider that we have. In the documentation for the provider, this gives us an example for how to use the Cato provider. And so if I take this syntax here, this called HashiCorp config language, HCL, and I paste that into an empty text file that I have on my system. Again, going back into my file explorer, all that I have is one file that's created in an empty folder. That's all that I've done so far. And I do have Terraform installed on this system so far. And now this is the kind of easy examples that we find on the website here. So what we're telling Terraform in this example is what providers we want to use. And we're calling out the Cato provider in the specific minimum version. And then we have this clause here that talks about how to configure the Cato provider. And there's three parameters that are required to initialize the Cato provider for Terraform. One of them is the base URL or the endpoint, the Cato management application that I'm making a call against. And there are multiple instances of that, if whether it's US1 or Ireland or Japan or whichever
And you can
instance.
see other videos we've talked about the Cato API endpoints. That's all in the
Mhm.
API documentation. But you just need to make sure
Exactly.
you're calling the appropriate API endpoint based on where your CMA lives.
Exactly. So you'll put your URL in here based on the instance you're using. And the other two parameters here are sensitive values. This would be your API token that you create in other videos. We talked about how to create an API token, but I want to store that here, but I never, never, never want to store a sensitive value in clear text like this. So what I actually want to do is I want to create something called a variable. And so a variable is a predefined term inside of HashiCorp where I can give something a name. And maybe I want to call mine the Cato token. And in my Cato token, it's possible to define a default value for my value. Instead of putting it here, what I can do is I can have a reference to variable dot Cato token. So now
Mm-hmm.
instead of having to put a string value here of whatever this value is, I have kind of a pointer
Mm-hmm.
to whatever this value is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't necessarily need to define this value.
Mm-hmm.
There is a way to have this be seen or inherited from either a vault or a password manager or an environment variable, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to look up how to use Vault, Vault is another HashiCorp secret manager kind of solution. There's lots of solutions out there to
Yep.
manage secret values. I can insert the value from something like a secret manager into this,
Yep.
or I can use in this case, it would be like a Unix environment variable. So in a terminal window, if I type export, the name of my token or the name of my variable, in this case, I'm going to say tfvar underscore Cato token, and then I could give it some value. This is where I can put my API key.
So this is where you would actually paste the actual API key here, but it's a safe place to do it because it's the way the variable's stored and stuff. Is that right?
Correct. So a
Okay.
system environment variable is a common practice for where to store sensitive values. And what we're doing here is if I prefix the name of this environment variable with tf underscore var all caps, and then I name my environment variable with whatever the name of this is, I can then have that be something that is
Nice.
kind of dynamically put in there. So I'm hiding or storing
Yep.
my value on my system and not in my text file. We
So
don't
whether
want
using an
to.
environment variable or a vault, just don't ever expose an API, key directly in clear text.
That's exactly right.
Right
And
on.
so I have some environment variables already created for my development account that I've already have defined. So I can actually call this var dot account ID
Mm.
underscore dev three is underscore dev three. These are the names of my the account that I use. So I typically, instead of just creating a generic, hold on just a second, I'll put this one called account ID here. Just a second. Instead of storing something generic called Cato token, I usually put the name of the account afterwards as the name of my environment variable. So I know exactly the account that I'm using. So I have one called dev3, for example.
And the account ID variable is just your account ID in the backend. Why wouldn't you just paste that directly in here? Is it make it easier from the Terraform perspective as a
I want to
kind of
keep those things coupled together so I don't confuse it. I don't need to, when I change a key, I could just change the account name to some other account. And I know
got
that
it?
if I
Yeah.
do the naming convention together, then it always goes together that way.
And
So
then you're always calling it and you don't have to remember the individual account ID or whatever. Okay. Yep.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
Or I mean, you can put a different account ID if you have a like an MSP or reseller account that can manage multiple sub accounts. I
Yep.
could change the ID, but there's always typically one common to have one account ID associated with the key that you create. That's a very
Got
common
it.
case,
That
right?
makes sense. So the key and the account ID go together. So it makes the best practice is create the variables for them. Bob's your uncle did. You can start doing all the things.
Correct.
Got it. Okay,
And,
cool.
yep. And so then the next thing down here in the list would be so I'm actually going to take this configuration that we have here on the socket site, and I'm going to drop this into my config file. And I want to create this site now, my branch site. I'll call it my, branch site with this configuration. And let's go ahead and jump into Terraform init. And then we're going to run a Terraform plan. And if I do a plan, it's going to look at my configuration file and tell me what it's going to do.
Yep.
And then I'm going to create this one. So I'll do a uh, Terraform apply. And if I do auto approve, then it doesn't need to ask me for confirmation. It's going to go ahead and create this site now.
Yep. And it's doing the state piece too, so it knows the state of it and applying
Mhm.
everything that's only been
Yep.
changed, just like we talked about in previous or other videos. Okay.
Yep. In other videos, we talked about the state file, how the state file can help you manage what has been created. And so it's going to remember these configurations here. And so it's going to go create that site for me. And then it's going to provide, in this case, we haven't talked about this before, but the state file actually has all this information in it. I can do Terraform show. The Terraform show tells me everything it knows about in
Oh,
state.
that's cool.
And so now I can actually see. So when I go here and I add, if I want to change this and I do a Terraform, I have an alias set up for Terraform to run type TF. So I could do TF plan. I could then say, okay, what am I changing? It's going to know about the change that I made and say, oh, I need to go update the name of this. And here's things in your site that are going to be updated based on the configurations that I
And if
have.
you made manual changes on the Cato management applications, can you have Terraform update its state based on those manual changes, or how does that work?
Yeah, so in the Cato management application, we go back over to this application that I'm in here, and we see my dev branch. Let's actually see what happens when I delete this site completely.
Okay.
What if somebody goes in here and they accidentally blow it away? One of the value propositions of Terraform is I have the ability to manage state locally, and I could say Terraform refresh. Terraform refresh is going to pull down the latest configuration from CMA, which there is not one. And when I do a Terraform plan, it should tell me that I need to create a new one because that no longer exists.
Oh,
So
interesting.
now we need to create it. So what we're doing here is creating a final state of what we want. And no matter what happens over there or what happens,
Yeah,
the state file is our brain to be able to
that's
revert
awesome. So
back to
even
last
if you
node
did
the same
something
thing.
locally, another admin, the refresh allows it to be able to get the current state of the Cato management application.
Exactly.
That's
So
awesome.
I could then say refresh and pull down. If somebody made changes, I can overwrite them back with what my
That's
local
awesome.
config is. So
Yeah,
now Terraform brain, the state file becomes the source of truth, if you will, for all
bingo. Yeah, the
configuration.
sort. Yeah, exactly. So all these changes are made. Boom. You can then. It's a great way to extract, manage, and then make changes. That's great.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Anything else, Brian?
Nope, that's it for
Awesome.
use Terraform with Cato.
Good stuff. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.